Hello, everybody. This is the Kalen Joseph Show, and today I am joined by two paralegals and Numan Bhatti, whose uncle has been murdered by a man that claims to have a mental illness. We will be discussing the validity of a mental issue as a defense and whether or not those that suffer from mental illnesses should be exempt from charges. Now, before we go into major detail, I want to provide a little information for you on what Canada has to say about the defense of mental disorder. So, the Criminal Code of Canada states the following about mental disorder. Section 16. No person is criminally responsible for an act committed or an admission made while suffering from a mental disorder that rendered the person incapable of appreciating the nature and quality of the act or omission or of knowing that it was wrong. Part 2. Presumption. Every person is presumed not to suffer from a mental disorder so as to be exempt from a criminal responsibility by virtue of subsection, until the contrary is proved on the balance of probabilities. Part 3. Burden of proof. The burden of proof that an accused was suffering from a mental disorder so as to be exempt from a criminal responsibility is on the party that raises the issue. And now, I will be introducing our two paralegals on the show today. This is Mehan Mohammed, and this is Shratika Shetty.
Hi, we're two paralegals from the Jeff Ringer Law Firm, and we're here to tell you all today why the man that killed Numan Bhatti's uncle should be exempt of all criminal charges.
This is my other guest, Numan Bhatti, whose uncle was tragically stabbed to death by another man.
The man who killed my uncle should be charged with all the regular charges a normal person gets when committing a murder, because at the end of the day, he still committed a crime, and a very cruel one.
So to begin, the verdict of any case is heavily dependent and reliant on the evidence given. As such, the evidence given may pertain to police interrogations, and because of that, if a mentally ill patient is taken under to a police interrogation, they will succumb to false interrogation most of the time. And this is because they do not understand the importance and the intensity of a situation and how their false or true claims may come up and surface and how they may come back to bite them in the ass later on. Secondly, the competency to stand trial would not work in this case, seeing as mentally ill patients are deemed incompetent because they are not mentally stable. Because of that, I believe that in every single way possible, mentally ill patients should not and will not be tried for any criminal charges. In addition to that, the ability to form a criminal intent is also a huge part in any criminal charge. And if a person is mentally ill, they really have a skewed and distorted perception of morality, and because of that, they don't really know how to differentiate between right and wrong. As such, because they are mentally ill, they will not be able to form any real intent without knowing the consequences of their actions, because they don't know whether or not what they're doing is right or whether or not what they're doing is wrong. And finally, mitigation with evidence of any mental illness can come around and be used as a defense or evidence if the mentally ill patient has been subject to different types of abuse, to different types of, I guess you can say, different types of extenuating factors as they grow up, because a lot of it can depend on the nurture of the person itself and how they were traumatized, how they were hurt, and how their past events have come back, and through mitigation have foreseen different, I guess, different sorts of acts and how they will be affected by these events.
This man is not mentally ill. He was diagnosed improperly, just like many others. And they just use this as an excuse to commit crime, just as this man murdered my uncle. They just use this as a get out of jail free card.
The legal system is based heavily on the views of society. Society is governed on the basis of equity. Equity is fairness. How is it fair to charge a man that had no intent or motive to commit a murder? He had no mens rea, no actus rea, which are both needed in order to charge a person with murder, or any crime at that. The difference between equality and equity is a thin one. Equality is based on how we have to treat everyone the same, but our society is not made up of the same individuals. There are differences in every person. This is why we base our legal system on equity. Equity provides consideration for individuals that might not be able to stand up for themselves. In this case, the man that was charged with this murder.
If you're gonna talk about equity, then what about my uncle? Should he not be justified? He was brutally murdered. Should he not be given justice? This man was completely self-conscious. He knew what was going on and he chose to make these actions. If this man is so mentally challenged, then why is he out in public? Should he not be getting the treatment? Should he not be getting rehabilitated?
Ethics are defined as moral principles that govern a person or a group's behavior. So, what principles would be used to govern a mentally ill patient's behavior? And if principles and these ethics are engraved into them as what's right and what's wrong, how would they learn to differentiate between the two? Again, I'm kind of coming back to this whole idea of how they don't really know the difference between right and wrong, and they don't know the nature of their actions. And in this case specifically, the murderer of Newman's uncle probably should have known that sharp objects are bad, but because he's a mentally ill subject, how would he have known that? How would he have known that what he was doing is wrong? Murder is just something that could be as easily looked at as something normal. For example, if you're a mentally ill patient, how did you know that murdering something or someone is any worse than dropping a pencil? Is any worse than kicking someone? Is any worse than running after someone and pushing them? You wouldn't. That's the thing. You're so used to being told that everything is done for a reason, but you don't understand why these reasons are there. You understand what reasons are there for bad things to be done, for crimes to be committed. You don't really understand the severity of the situation if you are mentally unstable. And because of that, I think that mentally ill patients should all be exempt from any criminal charges, or should be tried for their mental illness first and then be exempt from criminal charges. Because if you look at it, it really isn't fair, and it really isn't ethical to charge someone that does not know the discourse and any real negativity of their action, and doesn't understand why their actions are bad. Because to them, they're just actions in generals, right, Newman?
This time it was my uncle. Next time it could be your father, your mother, your brother, even your wife. If we allow mentally illness as an excuse, then people just go around killing everyone saying, oh, I'm mentally ill. As a get out of jail free card.
Alright guys, I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to cut you off there, but this is the end of our show, so please join us for tomorrow. Thank you, Newman, Mayhad, and Shatika for your perspective on all of this. That's all, folks. Take care.